Complete freedom starts from the inside. If you think of Viktor Frankl in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, or Nelson Mandela, who was in jail 27 years, they become prototypes of the reality that our freedom is not defined by our external circumstances. Real freedom is having come to the conclusion that you are not your circumstances and that you redefine your future from the inside out. Life is full of restrictions. However, life is also full of options. So if you focus on your restrictions, then you complain your way through life and you see yourself from the perspective of deficits. But if you celebrate your options, then you see your life as a sequence of opportunities. Our job is to convince people to pursue the opportunities and thus overcome the restrictions. I grew up in what you might call a fundamentalist Christian home. By the time I reached my teen years, the civil rights movement was at its peak. All of the racial sensitivities and the frustrations of the moment in 1968 came to a head, and I became a student activist in my school around racial issues, fighting for both student rights and racial justice. When I was in college, my passion for racial uplift, particularly among Black people, was threatened by the use of drugs by Black students on our college campus. And I, along with friends of mine, took the position that drug use would undermine any Black progress that we made. The drug dealers were absolutely livid and decided that they would kill me. So they kidnapped me from my room, took me on a ride to a vacant lot at 5:30 in the morning to kill me. Just miraculously, a police officer saved my life. It was during that season after my kidnapping, I came to the conclusion that Jesse Jackson was the new Martin Luther King. By 1973, I had introduced myself to him, convinced me to hire me on his staff, and in 1974, I went to work for him. In 1975, I was the national director of his organization. By the mid-1970s, I noticed even a larger shift. The drug problem had gotten exponentially worse. The race problem was really subordinate to Black-on-Black crime. It seemed that the values of the Black community had shifted drastically, and Black organizations, Black families were weaker, not because of exterior forces, but because of interior weaknesses. And I felt a growing contradiction between what we were doing in terms of reacting to explicit signs of racism versus what Black communities needed, and that was solutions to internal problems. To be on welfare meant that you were poor, needed some help from the government, but you couldn't have a husband. And if you had a husband, they'd cut off the benefits. By 1989, Dr. Samuel DeWitt Proctor, at that time, was the pastor of the Abyssinian Church in Harlem. He was mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. He was not only my professor, but my mentor, and he lived in Somerset, New Jersey. And this church became vacant. And Sam Proctor said, "I have just the guy for you. Here I am, a businessman, I'm ready to conquer the world." And I said to Dr. Proctor, "I can't go to this church. It has nothing." And he said to me, "If guys like you don't go to churches like that, what will happen to our people?" And it just kind of grabbed me. I said, "Listen, I can stay here forever as long as the enthusiasm of Sunday morning spills over for the empowerment of the neighborhood around the church." So we embarked on a mission. And the execution of that plan has now resulted in over $500 million of new investments in this neighborhood. We have 2 new parks. We have 1,000 units of affordable housing. We have a new high school, a new supermarket, a new elementary school. And the plan that the church created became the plan that the neighborhood then expanded on. And the plan that we created as a neighborhood became the official plan of the municipalities that we sit in. So there's been a preservation of what was strong, a replacement of what was weak, and we filled in a lot of gaps. One of the principles that drive our work is the principle of social entrepreneurship. The programs that we've institutionalized have been in a couple of key areas. The first being foster care and adoption. We find around the country that some people are attracted to foster care just to get the check. The pipeline to prisons is in large measure coming out of the foster care system. They're moved from house to house. They often are angry because of the environment. By the time they're 18, they're like ticking time bombs. We decided to go after the foster care industry and partner with the state of New Jersey. We have a fee-for-service enterprise. It's a business. We now recruit families to become foster parents. We train them, the state licenses them. Then we maintain a network of foster homes so that anytime a child is in need of foster care, the state calls us and then we place the child.
Not only do we place them, but we service the homes that they're in. So once a family becomes licensed and they take a child in, we don't go away. We become a part of a family.
See, that's the added value of having a community-based grassroots organization partnering with the state, because that context can protect the child in ways that the state just doesn't have the resources to protect. It saves the state money, it spares the prison system of likely prospects, and it provides a permanent solution for a child. So rather than wait for the state to reform the prison system, we cut off the market by rescuing the kids ourselves. That's social entrepreneurship. When we first engaged with the state lost more foster families every year than they got. Whereas our retention rate on average for the last 15 years has been around 90%.
We've licensed over 435 homes for children. As of today, we've placed over 1,275 children in loving homes. We have over 275 children who've been adopted. Unfortunately, those children were not able to go home, but they were already home.
If a church or a faith-based organization or a mosque or synagogue can provide a service, even though it may have religious strategies, as long as it has secular outcomes and it's cost effective and it complies with the law, then the government should feel free to contract with that entity without regard to its religion. The second principle that drives our work is limited government. We care about people so much that we don't want them to be restricted to government as the only option to get on their feet. Is there a role for government? Yes. But the role should be defined by the people solving the problem and not by the philosophers who simply analyze the problem. And the reason this neighborhood is transformed today is because government cooperated but did not take the lead. We took the lead. We defined the vision, and government played a limited role, but an important role. Even when government does not do what we'd like to see government do, people can bring about the change themselves.
In and out of jail, over 15, 20 years, strung out off heroin and cocaine, over 20 years. Went to a couple of drug programs, didn't work. I keep losing my job. I was working body work over here, painting cars over here, working for this car wash over here.
There is a role people must play in their own uplift.
And from the car wash, with no water in the truck, with a station wagon knocking on people's doors, I just kept going. Inch by inch, everything's a cinch.
And when you go around the country and look at the people who are the unsung heroes of our urban centers, they always insist that people take responsibility for their own improvement, their own healing.
I gotta start my own business. Jasper's mobile car wash is taking off.
So our debt-free movement is based on personal responsibility.
The job of D-Free is to really to get people to realize that they're not their bank accounts. You're not your money, but it's what's going to help to really elevate your life. It's really addressing the psychological, spiritual, mental, and emotional aspects of the way we handle our money. taking what our behaviors look like and applying it to practical financial principles. You're eliminating debt, you're paying your bills on time, making sure that you're increasing your net worth, and then taking those savings and transitioning it so that you can start building a future.
I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it.
This culture of immediate gratification, it eats away at our financial capacity because we want it and we want more than we can afford as quickly as we can get it, and thus we use the credit card.
This country and the world, money is it, period. You're being sold 24 hours a day.
The culture of thrift that used to be normal in this country has been replaced by the culture of debt.
And we've internalized a lot of that, and our behaviors reflect that we're being sold.
The reason we tolerate government debt the way we do is because we have our own debt. So if I'm in debt and you're in debt and the state's in debt and the Fed's in debt, it doesn't even offend us that we owe more money to China. In fact, one fellow told us on tape one time, he said, well, of course I'm in debt, it's the American way. Our culture was at one point built upon what we called the Judeo-Christian ethic. And that ethic is grounded in principles. Those principles are foundational for the free enterprise system. They're foundational for our political system. You cannot have a sustainable society without core values based on the principles that the founders understood.
Have we lost those values?
Not only we've lost them, we don't even remember having had them. We are now raising a generation for whom those values are foreign. Integrity, honesty, truth, discipline, thrift. That was a core principle in our society until the last 30 years. There is a devolution of principles that result in chaos, violence, confusion, and poverty. They are social enterprises led by grassroots organizations that are very close to the people who have need, which, if supported and empowered, can help people who otherwise would be stuck in poverty. And that ethic of service is what we've tried to build into our work here.
My dream is to put 20 vans on the road, get these boys off the street, and start something crazy.
It's what Darryl builds into his work in Indianapolis, it's what Jubal builds into his work. Freedom is helping someone else become free. That's civil society. That's the village. That's what Dr. King would call the beloved community. It's America.